63% of men in the United States are single, in comparison to 34% of their female counterparts.
Wow.
And it's not just relationships. Men aren't really having sex altogether. In a study conducted on males ages 18 to 24, sexual inactivity increased from 19 to 31%
Wow.
between the years of 2002 and 2018. But
Wow.
before I get into the 6 points as to
For a generation you assume to be super sexual, they ain't having a lot of sex. They just beating their meat, I guess. I don't know.
why this is happening, let's take a 50,000-foot view of the situation and look at why people do or don't do certain things. Neurologically speaking, every action that humans take is either to pursue pleasure or avoid pain. So if a large group, particularly men in this situation, are abstaining from relationships, it's probably because they're chasing something that they perceive to be as better, or avoiding the stress and challenges that relationships can bring. To zoom back in, we need to explore the societal motivators that are pushing 63% of men to remain single. So in this video, I'm going to go over the 6 key factors that are contributing to this overall trend. Let's get into it. Which brings me to my first point. Let's start with something that's been quietly affecting millions of men for years: low testosterone. Now, testosterone isn't just about muscles and aggression. It's critical for sex drive, mood, and overall energy.
Yeah, I've seen a statistic that said from 1979 to 2022, men on average have been losing 1% testosterone every year. So a man that was born in 2010 or whatever is going to have about 30% less testosterone than a man his same age in 1979, which is crazy. And I think it has to do with a lot of the diet. It has to do with you getting 6 hours of goddamn sleep a night. It has to do with indulging in too much alcohol, which absolutely kills your testosterone. Like, all these things are issues, but I mean, you can't really do much about the plastic, but all the other things you got to manage. And there's simple tests you can take. Like, you can go to Walgreens to get a testosterone test. I've done this before to test my levels of testosterone because it's really important for men to monitor these things. These things affect you. Your hormones are going to affect you without you even knowing it. So you got to be conscious of that, especially since you got the tools to do it. They fighting against you, so you got to use every tool you can to fight back. You got to get them testosterone levels up.
A young man in his early 20s who, despite being physically healthy, struggles with low energy and a lack of interest in intimacy. He might not recognize that his testosterone levels are at an all-time low. And it's not just him. This is happening to millions of men across the country. Studies have shown that testosterone levels in men have been declining for decades, with a significant drop observed in men as young as 25. And low testosterone can lead to decreased libido, contributing to the overall lack of interest in sexual intimacy. Low testosterone levels can also significantly impact men's mental health, affecting mood, cognition, and overall psychological well-being. Testosterone is a hormone that plays crucial levels in lots of bodily functions, and when testosterone levels drop, it can lead to a wide array of negative impacts. Some of these things, from a psychological level, I'm going to outline here. Depression is one of the most common psychological issues when it comes to low testosterone levels in men. Study after study has shown that men with low testosterone levels tend to experience massive symptoms of depression. This includes persistent sadness, loss of interest in their activities, and feelings of hopelessness. Testosterone is thought to influence neurotransmitters in the brain, such as serotonin, which plays a critical role in overall mood regulation.
Yeah, those kind of things, they go hand in hand. Obviously, if you're not sleeping, your testosterone goes down. If you're not eating right, your testosterone goes down. If you're not working out, your testosterone goes down. And then, of course, you're going to have depression if your testosterone levels are low. I think it's just a lack of activity. You got to do those things to fix your testosterone levels or to get you more energy so you're not going to be depressed. They all go hand in hand. It makes sense to me.
Testosterone can also lead to increased levels of anxiety, and men with low test will experience heightened levels of stress, which can exacerbate the feelings of unease and worry. A study published in the Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men with low testosterone levels were more likely to be diagnosed with depression. And as far as a solution, while testosterone replacement therapy has become more and more popular. The second thing we have to look at is cognitive function and how low T impacts this. Low testosterone has been linked with overall cognitive decline, including issues with memory, attention, and overall executive function.
I think another issue is too with depression. For decades, they've taken the feminine approach that all men need to do is just let it out and talk about it. Men don't like to do that. We like to take action. We like to solve our issues. And so now they're trying to say testosterone helps, but the companies want to inject the testosterone. You don't need the testosterone injected. At 22 years old, you're supposed to be able to run through a fucking wall. You need to go to sleep on time, stop with the porn, stop with the drugs, stop with the alcohol, get moving, because there's no time in human history where people didn't move every single day. You're supposed to be sweating every day as a young man. And so, yeah, that's the things you got to do to fight the depression. So basically what they're doing is saying the same things that the quote-unquote manosphere said for years in terms of, yeah, you're not depressed. You just need to start taking action in these things that you said you want to do. So we know what we need to do to solve these issues. They just told us for years and years and years, oh, all you got to do is talk about it and cry about it, just like the women. No, we're men. We have a different approach to life. So you got to take action. That's how you solve that issue. And now the science has finally caught up to things that just seem to me to be common sense.
Men with low test often experience symptoms of brain fog, which is categorized with symptoms like difficulty concentrating, poor memory, and slower processing speed. And some research suggests that lower testosterone levels also increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease. Although more research is absolutely needed for this, it's important to understand the impact from an overall well-being and psychological executive functioning position when it comes to this problem that we're seeing with men all over the country. Regarding this line, testosterone does have neuroprotective effects, and so a deficiency in testosterone, well, that makes you more susceptible to losing your mind. Another critical impact when it comes to testosterone is the impact that it has on
The school shooter is never the captain of the football team.
overall motivation. Low testosterone levels are often associated with high levels of fatigue. And if men who are known to be ambitious and highly productive are struggling with low energy levels, well, not only does it tank their motivation, but it tanks their self-esteem. Men with low test might experience really, really high levels of fatigue even after getting plenty of sleep. And this can lead them to further isolation as they don't even feel motivated or inclined to engage in daily activities. And this over a long enough time horizon, well, it will impact things like work, relationships, and overall quality of life. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have anything to do with relationships? Well, men with low testosterone also experience elevated levels of irritability and increased emotional instability. And this can manifest itself as increased anger, frustration, or mood swings. Yes, men have mood swings too. And this will lead to overall further isolation and complete social withdrawal. And when testosterone levels in men are low, men find themselves more prone to emotional outbursts or difficulty managing stress and overall negative emotion. And if you play this out over a long enough time horizon, well, this will absolutely impact men's self-esteem and overall confidence. When testosterone levels in men drop, they tend to experience a decrease in self-worth, and this can lead to feelings of inadequacy or further feelings of insecurity. And this will absolutely impact their ability to go out and have social interactions.
Yeah, by the way, when they're talking about like mood swings and stuff, most of what they're talking about is anger. Because we've been lied to about that too by women for years. Oh, all men need to do is express their feelings. Well, a young boy is different from a young girl. He's not going to cry. Usually boys, they express their emotion through anger a lot of the times. And if they don't learn how to control that through some type of stoicism by having a male role model, then yeah, it expresses itself. And that's when you get the shooters. You got the guy with it in his backpack.
It definitely stifles their willingness to pursue new opportunities. And due to the low self-esteem and lower confidence as they continue to withdraw, it's going to further exacerbate the feelings of isolation and loneliness. And this will then negatively impact their overall mental state and well-being. And this concept around men's testosterone and self-esteem isn't just my opinion. A study in psychoneuroendocrinology, I know, what a word, found that men with lower testosterone levels self-report lower self-esteem and confidence. Research also shows that testosterone levels in men can fluctuate in response to social and sexual interactions. And this can happen in various ways. Testosterone levels in men can elevate when they are in competitive or dominant social situations, especially when interacting with women. For example, studies have shown that men's testosterone levels increase when they are competing for attention, or when they perceive themselves to be winning in a social situation. Conversely, testosterone levels can decrease if a man perceives himself to be less dominant or loses in a competitive situation. And I want you to remember this point because it will be important later on. Next, we have to touch on the impact of romantic relations and men's testosterone levels. Men often experience a temporary increase in testosterone production when they are interacting with a potential partner or someone they find attractive. This is part of a natural physiological response that prepares the body for potential mating opportunities. Interestingly, though, once men actually enter into a committed relationship, their testosterone levels may decrease, and this decrease is thought to promote caregiving behaviors, which are beneficial long-term in the context of that relationship. But relative to this topic, this isn't really happening. So while there is evidence that men's testosterone levels do decline once they get into a relationship, men aren't actually getting in relationships. Now, obviously, engaging in sexual activity can increase testosterone levels. The anticipation of sex, as well as the act itself, has been shown to boost testosterone levels in men acutely. And regular sexual activity has actually been shown to maintain higher levels of testosterone at a baseline for men, specifically over time. But now we have to talk about the things that actually matter within this context, which is why testosterone levels might be declining. Negative interactions for men in particular, such as rejection or social stress, lead to a decrease in overall testosterone production. Now, carry that over into the stress related to conflict in a relationship, we can see how this would exacerbate the impact. Now, as a side note, a lot of men who do get into relationships do struggle with lower testosterone levels. And one of the important things that I want you to have is that men, once they become fathers, also see a decline in testosterone production. And this, again, is to facilitate nurturing behavior and kind of bring down the levels of aggression that men naturally embody with higher levels of testosterone, especially with the presence
another big issue with this is how it used to work is you get the most like dominant guys, and then the women would come with their femininity and conquer the most dominant guys, dropping their testosterone levels by having them in relationships long term, and then eventually giving them children, which drop their testosterone levels even more so they could be more caring. The only issue is feminism teaches that everything that a man who has a lot of testosterone does, like being territorial, you can't go here, you can't do this, being more risk-taking. A lot of the things that feminism says is toxic masculinity is that high testosterone behavior. So the women will get in these relationships, and because of feminism, they're taught that the characteristics of a man with this type of testosterone is bad. They'll just sleep with these dudes, and they can't stay on the horse because the feminism has brainwashed them into thinking that this is a bad guy, when really he's just a high-performing, high testosterone man. And it takes a very feminine, caring, graceful, that will allow you grace to make mistakes as a testosterone fueled man to conquer that testosterone. But a lot of women, because of feminism, they don't have the patience to stay in those relationships with those guys with that high testosterone. So those dudes are just walking around just sleeping with everything, getting them small testosterone boosts, super dominant, and that's why you're seeing the gap widen between the dudes who are high performing and the guys who are not, because those dudes who are high performing aren't getting conquered by feminine females to drop their testosterone levels, to be more caring. And so the dudes who have that testosterone are just dominating. They just going all over. So
an infant. But the important takeaway relative to the topic of why men are single, understanding that the impact that a social interaction has, specifically with a female that they find attractive or someone they might be pursuing, if that experience for them is negative, it's going to negatively impact their overall physiology, increasing stress and decreasing production of testosterone. Which brings me to my next point of why men are struggling to get into relationships, or why the majority of them are maintaining their status of being single. We have to talk about the impact of current culture and society with an abundance of fatherless homes. We've heard of women having daddy issues, but we don't necessarily talk about the impact of men growing up without a father and how that can lead to further issues. Without a strong male role model, many men struggle to develop confidence and the social skills that are required for them to navigate a intimate relationship. Think about a young boy growing up without his father around. He might be raised by a super strong, incredibly caregiving and nurturing mother, but there's still a void in his understanding of what it means to be a man in a relationship. And this lack
and they have a harder time showing being assertive in relationships too. Either they become over assertive, or they have a hard time being assertive. Like I know a dude who's raised by a single mother, like his mom was a single mom, had him early, and he has a good woman with him. And when he brings his woman by his mom and his sister bullies his girlfriend. And he wants to be assertive and tell his mom, nah, we got to stop doing that. But he doesn't know how to communicate that to a woman. I think when you got a dad and you see him under pressure, you see how he banters with women, you see how he's able to put his foot down when necessary when dealing with your mom, you learn just from watching it how to do it a little bit better. So I think that, you learn a lot from watching a dad operate under that pressure with a woman. And from my experience personally, the dudes I know who are best with women at an early age have fathers in their lives. The dudes who know how to banter with women and how to not take it so seriously and how to stay calm and patient when they just nagging or whatever it may be, they have fathers in their lives because they know how to do it because they seen their dads do it. And with fatherlessness, due to issues with marriage laws, it's causing a big issue. It's causing
Lack
a
of
big
guidance can manifest itself as insecurity or complete avoidance, or more importantly, driving super toxic dynamics within relationships that they cultivate, especially if his interaction with his mother was, well, volatile. Fatherless homes have been linked to a range of social challenges, including the difficulty of forming healthy romantic relationships. Without the tools and examples provided by a healthy father figure, men will find themselves unequipped to engage in meaningful relationships. And this is because fathers play a crucial role in the development of a healthy masculine in their sons. And this influence is multifaceted, encompassing direct behavioral modeling, emotional support, and the provision of a secure environment where boys can explore their identity and learn the strong form of a healthy masculine. Through everyday interactions, boys learn about assertiveness, problem solving, and how to balance traditionally masculine traits like strength with emotional intelligence. And for fathers who model healthy masculinity, demonstrating respect, empathy, and responsible behavior, equip their sons with the tools to navigate moving into manhood in a healthy way. Now,
what really helps is the dad is the ultimate authority, and you can't use anger as leverage. When a boy is growing up and they get that testosterone phase in their teens, if they only have a single mom, there's nobody there to moderate the anger, because a boy's first response is to try to muscle through everything or push through it with anger and frustration. But a dad with his authority, knowing that he can't show anger towards his authority figure, conquers that anger and teaches him to solve problems in other ways, being more diplomatic. A lot of the guys that I know are the coolest, chill dudes. There are dudes who have single moms that are good with women, don't get me wrong, but the ones that are the chillest and the coolest and the funniest dudes always got a father in their life. That's just the pattern that I've noticed personally.
Another really important note, especially around cultural standards and the pressure that we put on men, specifically when it comes to their emotions, is that fathers who are present and emotionally available for their sons can help them learn to work through their emotions as they continue to grow. And this counters the cultural pressure for boys and men to continue to suppress their emotional state. And this can lead to issues like overall aggression or emotional detachment later on in life. Now, lastly, especially as a clinical psych student, I have to touch on the importance of rough and tumble play. This is a form of physical interaction that often occurs between father and son, and this plays a significant role in the overall development of social and emotional skills. It helps boys learn to regulate their emotions as they go through play, build restraint around their impulses, and understand boundaries while cultivating overall levels of resilience. During rough and tumble play, boys learn the difference between playful aggression and real aggression, and this again helps them to develop overall self-control and also understand other people's social cues. So without this, you can see how the development and manifestation of a man's aggression without the understanding of when is too much can lead to negative consequences, not just for them, but for the people around them. Right. So it may not feel like it's that important when it comes to why men are single. I think it's really important
to basically, the dude who kills somebody because they stepped on his shoes he's a feminine man. You don't know how to control your aggression and anger if you are willing to harm somebody because you feel disrespected from having your shoes stepped on. So
discuss the absent father issue that we have in our current culture. Without a father or a positive male role model, men don't get the skills or understanding of how to navigate things, especially interpersonally. We learn, all of our behavior is learned, and we tend to learn it by observing our parents, specifically at a very young age. And fathers are important when it comes to modeling how to treat a partner with respect, and vice versa for women, but the conversation today is about men. How do you manage your emotions? How do you address conflict? How do you communicate effectively? And when boys grow up without witnessing these dynamics, it can manifest as dysfunctional. But the problem is they just were never taught how. And if we look into the psychological impacts around this, I'm sure you've heard of attachment styles. But if you haven't, I'm just going to cover the theory here. Attachment theory suggests that children form their initial understanding of relationships through their interactions with their primary caregivers. So when a father is absent, it can disrupt the secure attachment that is required for developing both trust and confidence in the pursuit of a relationship. So for the children who are raised without a father figure, and this is for both parents as well. So when we look at the problem with boys being raised without fathers, we can see how this can lead to them developing an insecure attachment style, and this will absolutely exacerbate problems and challenges when it comes to creating a stable and healthy romantic bond, especially if they build a fear or core belief that amplifies anxiety around the experience of abandonment. And this will lead to a reluctance to engage and absolutely perpetuate trust issues. Now, the last part here around the importance of a father figure, I have to touch on this self-concept and what it means to be a man. The absence of a father can lead to complete confusion around gender roles and self-identity. Boys may struggle and tend to understand what it means to be a man, which can lead to insecurity or overcompensation in their adult life. And the overcompensation complex is either hyper-masculine behaviors that can be incredibly toxic, or complete passivity in relationships, which can also be toxic. And this is because they don't have the skill set or tools to understand how to balance and navigate and validate their natural aggression when it comes to their behavior, and also have the emotional intelligence and skills to communicate around how their partner's needs need to be met, as well as validating their own. And as we can guess here, this is going to lead to overall amplifications of adversarial interactions and not having the ability to find resolution within those conflicts. And this over time as a pattern will lead to up and down, a roller coaster of chaos when it comes to trying to engage with something akin to long-term commitment without having the skills to actually navigate that terrain. Which brings me to my next point. We have to talk a little bit about feminism. The feminist movement in itself has absolutely reshaped the gender dynamics within our culture. And this has had a complex and profound impact on men's interactions in romantic relationships. While the movement has largely focused on promoting gender equality and overall the empowerment of women, which was and is incredible.
See, this is the part where you gotta kind of be a little bit politically correct. That's the difference between me and her. We're pretty much agreeing on everything, but she has to be a little bit more politically correct. Let's just be honest. Feminism has not been about equality for the last 30 years. It's just honest.
Incredibly important. It has also led to shifts and consequences with how men show up, behave, and find stability within relationship or in society. And this is because the feminist movement went to challenge the historical gender norms, which has led to extended pressure for men to engage in more egalitarian relationships. And for men, this can create some discomfort, especially those who were socialized and raised under more...
Well, that's a lie. They haven't really challenged any of the gender roles. All they've done is made it so that women don't have to do any of their gender roles. Yeah, that's all they've done. They still expect men to be masculine. They still expect men to protect. They still expect men to provide. Nothing has changed on that side. But as far as what the women are supposed to do for the men to deserve that type of behavior, bear children, be feminine, try to maintain a healthy body, all these things, they try to push those to the wayside and say, no, women don't have to do that to be good women, but this is what you should be doing to be a good man. So they actually haven't challenged the gender roles. They still want men to be the men that they were before. They just want to be able to not, they just don't want to have the responsibility of doing anything that the women used to have to do, cooking, cleaning, tending to family issues, like things like that. They want to be able to go work, save their money while you go to work, pay all the bills, and help them with the chores, which, you know, in my eyes ain't fair. If I'm paying all the bills, you're doing majority of the housework. That's just how it's going to operate. In my house, I know some dudes have got it otherwise, and maybe they don't pay as many bills. So yeah, you should be helping a little bit more. But and here, yeah, if I pay majority of the bills, you're gonna do majority of the housework. That's just how it works. Now, I'm not a slob. I do know how to do those things, and I do clean up after myself. Of course, I don't even want to live in a dirty house. But at the end of the day, yeah, if I'm paying majority of the bills, you're gonna do your gender roles too as a woman, and that is cooking, cleaning, bearing children, doing those types of things. So.
More traditional values and those historic views of masculinity, in this meaning, tactically, that they were the primary breadwinners within the dynamic of their relationship, and the key decision maker when it came to moving forward with the long-term plans within that relationship. But as women gain more education and more economic independence, pairing that with some levels of more assertiveness, or as men would say, masculine women, men feel uncertain of how they fit into this new dynamic. Not all men, but some men. Yeah. And this can lead to overall restraint or hesitancy when it comes to engaging in any type of relationship. Because these traditional markers of masculinity, as far as financial provision and making decisions, are being redefined and challenged regularly, this can lead to a lot of confusion and overall insecurity when it comes to men, especially their courage and confidence in pursuing relationships. Now, we also have to talk about the increased expectation that we've put on men when it comes to the emotional labor. Most people in the modern world want men to express and communicate their emotions or be much more attuned to them the way that women tend to manifest these things. And while there is importance around men's expression or ability to validate so that they don't compartmentalize their emotions, many of them have not been socialized to engage in this type of work. And to be completely transparent here, I don't think it's even required for all men to function that way. But the pressure to meet these new relational standards can be really intimidating and somewhat uncomfortable.
Well, men express through creation because we don't create life like women do. And that's the issue with men. Men have to understand that we have a duty to find our own purpose. Women have a built-in purpose, so they can just lollygag their whole lives. As long as they have kids, a lot of them will find a lot of fulfillment and purpose through that one aspect. So they have purpose. It's the male duty to go and find his purpose. So we create art, we create things, we conquer the physical, and the women conquer the more spiritual and mental. That's just my perspective of it. So as a man, it is our duty to go out and find our purpose and create our own purpose. So with nihilism and people just feeling like there is no point of life, a lot of that's dying. But you got to get out there and go find your fucking purpose. That's what you have to do as a man in order to get that testosterone and feel empowered and to get that momentum to keep going. Being bored is gay. Hot take, being bored is gay. This is going off the rails. Being bored is gay. Really what it is you're avoiding suffering. It's very hard to be bored when you're 200 push-ups in, but you don't want to do the push-ups, so you rather just sit there and scroll on your phone. Being bored is your brain creating adversity because your brain is made to overcome obstacles. So when you're not overcoming an obstacle, and I'm not saying leisure isn't important. Leisure is important, but too much leisure leads to boredom. And you know when you hit that point, and you can apply yourself and use that time of boredom. Suffering is much better than boredom is what I'm saying. It's better to suffer than to be bored. It's better to read that book that you said you was going to read than to just sit and be bored. It's better to do those push-ups that you can do right now than to be bored. It's better to do those things. So it's better to suffer to be bored, and you'll be more likely to get closer to your purpose. And that's the thing that men need, and that's the thing that men have to find because we're not women. Women have theirs already.
For a lot of men. And this will lead them to withdraw from relationships rather than to risk failing or some sort of rejection. Now, we also have to touch on the point of the concept of women being or becoming more masculine. The rise in more assertive and independent women can sometimes create tension in a relationship. And this phenomenon has several impacts on a man's sense of masculinity and his approach to romantic relationships. As women continue to embrace more and more masculine traits, such as assertiveness, ambition, and financial independence, men may feel like their own levels of masculinity are being challenged or completely diminished, as the qualities that once defined manhood are now shared across genders, leading some men to completely question, what is my role in this relationship? And these feelings can lead to
be a pay pig. That's how they want it. And that's why guys are dropping out of relationships, because they want you to take on all the responsibility but have no authority in your relationship. So you're supposed to do all these things, but you can't say anything about what's happening in the relationship, or you're misogynist, a bigot, you're controlling, insecure, all these different words that they'll do to shame you out of having any type of authority in your relationship. And even when you get into marriage, the government helps undermine your authority. At this point, it's to the point where a man in a marriage, the whole marriage is built on the happiness of the woman. And if at any moment, which is volatile, women's emotions are volatile. If at any moment she decides, unless you have a very virtuous woman, if at any moment she decides to get out of that marriage, the government that you pay taxes to will help her undermine you and take half your stuff. So that's why men aren't getting into relationships. Not only are the testosterone, all these other issues are important, but it's also the fact that they want you to take responsibility without giving you any authority, which is essentially slavery. So that's a big issue. Like, they want you to have a family, but as a man, you can't get no say. They turning your wife against you through media. They turning your daughters into hoes, and they turning your sons gay. And if you say anything about any of those things, you're a bad man. So they want you to have the responsibility of having the family and trying to raise these kids good while having no authority over the things that they do. If you try to look at the prospects that your daughter brings in or try to monitor your daughter's behavior so she ain't going out doing all these things, you're considered a controlling dad. If you tell your son you don't want him to be gay, maybe like you trying to help him, drive him in another direction, you're a bigot. You're a misogynist. You don't understand gay. He was born gay. So, they want you to have a lot of the responsibility with no authority, and that's why men are dropping out of relationships, because that's essentially slavery, and it's not fair. But that's what it is.
questions or feelings of insecurity or resentment, building things like contempt, particularly for men who derive their sense of self-worth and their sense of identity from traditionally masculine roles. And when men perceive that women are outperforming them, especially in areas that are typically traditionally masculine, it can completely cause them to revolt and create more tension between.
Sorry, I don't want to have to stop this, but let's just be honest here. That's not what the women are looking like at work. They're girl bosses. They're doing jobs that are absolutely meaningless to hold up this white collar standard. They're not, come on now. They got mechanics and police officers. Most of these jobs are still 90% men. And when they are including women, the women aren't doing as good of a job as the men would do in all these positions that they're trying to demonstrate right here. Let's just be honest. The reason why women are in the workforce at mass is because the jobs have AC and air conditioning and pizza parties. If we was outside still doing hard labor like we were 100 years ago, women would want no part like they did 100 years ago. They wanted to be in the house with the families because they didn't want to be working 9 hours a day for 6 days a week, which was the average work hours for a man 150 years ago. I guess we're in 2024 now, so you can't just say 100 years. But about 150 years ago, that's what it was. So, yeah, let's just be honest. That's not what the average woman working looks like. They're not taking the masculine roles at work. They're just making money in white-collar jobs that are absolutely meaningless, and they feel important, and they feel like they're better than the men that build the buildings that they're working in. That's the issue. They feel like the men who are building the buildings are less than them because they don't have the white-collar jobs.
Men and women. And the blurring of these lines continues to create power dynamic struggles in relationships. If both partners are both assertive and independent, it can be much more difficult to establish clear roles within that relationship. And this can lead to conflicts over control or any decision that's ever made. And men who feel like their masculinity is being suppressed may react by completely withdrawing emotionally, avoiding commitment, or becoming resentful. And this can lead to them undermining the foundation of the relationship, increasing levels of infidelity, and well, maybe we could even correlate this with divorce. But hey, I'm just speculating. Now, that tends to be more associated with the boss bitch movement, where women are ambitious, independent, and don't need no man. Again, kind of emasculating the traditional male role. However, I think another movement that's relevant to this conversation is the Me Too movement. And this brought necessary attention to sexual harassment and overall abuse, emphasizing the importance of consensual and respectful intimate interactions. However, in contrast, it's also amplified feelings of anxiety for men in particular. It feels like they're always on edge with needing to process and make sure they articulate consent, while also needing to feed into their natural male assertiveness or aggression when it comes to being the partner that pursues. And this isn't just
a big part of the Me Too movement. And I actually had this happen to me in 7th grade. I was a virgin, absolute virgin. There was a girl that came up and said that I sexually assaulted her, and I didn't even know this girl. And luckily, because everybody in the school knew me and knew my character, knew I was a virgin, knew, like, I used to be carrying the Bible everywhere. And so, like, I was one of those very straight and narrow dudes. And so since everybody knew my character, nobody believed her, but that was just, thank the Lord. One of the biggest issues with the Me Too movement is you can be convinced that something happened later on in life. Now, I do think it's important for a woman to have a space where she can, you can realize certain things were wrong later on. But with the Me Too movement, you have a lot of women convinced or talking about these things in ways that can convince a woman who was in a situation that wasn't even like that to believe that it was a situation that was like that, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I do think it is important because I don't think men should be harassing women sexually. Let's get that absolutely clear. And those men should be put under the prison. That's not tolerated. If men like me found out, we jumping on them. So I get it. But, and, I got women in my life that I love too. But at the end of the day, let's just be completely honest. Sometimes this stuff can get misconstrued, and later on in life, you could be 20 years down the line, and because you heard somebody on TikTok say, well, that's considered sexual harassment, you rethink about that issue, and now you want to put yourself in a victim mentality or a victim spot. But I think that's part of the issue with the Me Too movement, me personally.
Something that men talk about. This is also something that women talk about. But it's hard for them to walk up to somebody without feeling like they might be coming off as a creep or crossing a boundary. And this has led men to become significantly more cautious when it comes to pursuing any type of curiosity around pursuing a potential person that they find attractive, because they fear if they make any perceived misstep, it could be seen as inappropriate behavior.
Well, yeah, it's because being a creep isn't about something that you do, usually. It's about how attractive you are when you do it. So that's the issue. Every woman finds a man to a different level of attractiveness, so what they consider to be creepy is going to be different. So men don't know how to behave because we don't know how attractive this woman thinks we are. Because if you're attractive to this woman, you could do a lot more that ain't going to be considered creepy versus if you're not. and it's going to vary woman to woman. So it's really hard to navigate that if you don't know where you stand in their eyes. So all you could try to do is try to be extremely respectful. But to be honest, a lot of women, and I don't want to go too far with this because I don't think men should be disrespectful, but a lot of women aren't stimulated when you're too cordial sometimes. They like a little edge. Let's just be honest. So
behavior. And this anxiety can lead to complete withdrawal from any type of pursuit of a romantic partner. And men find themselves having this inner conflict of balancing their levels of assertiveness with respect for boundaries. So the combined effects of these movements and shift in gender dynamics overall are driving significant changes in how romantic relationships are formed and sustained. Which brings me to my next point. We have to talk about the red pill space. Picture a young man scrolling through social media and coming across the content of these extreme communities. He's bombarded with messages about the dangers of engaging in any type of a relationship with a woman, leading him to adopt a more defensive stance towards relationships. The red pill space and MGTOW movements have grown in response to these perceived injustices towards men and in the modern dating world itself. And these communities tend to argue that modern relationships are fraught with risks for men, leading many of them to opt out entirely. Now, it's important to note that these things do exist for a reason, and they tend to stem from a very genuine place. It's valid that many men are entirely frustrated with the modern dating world, and I can empathize with that. However, they also tend to perpetuate these negative stereotypes and discourage men completely from seeking meaningful relationships, leading to a cycle of isolation and resentment. The red pill and MGTOW, and if you don't know what MGTOW is, it's men going on their own way, have gained significant traction, specifically in recent years, particularly online. And they provide a space for men to discuss openly their experiences, frustrations, and perspective on
it's literally the only spot where men can actually have conversations, because every other place where men were traditionally together, women have invaded, and then they go, why aren't you treating us the way we want to be treated? So then they try to tame those spaces where men communicate. So like gaming, cars, sports, women have infiltrated those spaces, and then they try to control them by saying, I can show you how to do it better, and this is how you should treat me. And then they completely change the dynamic. So the manosphere is the only place where men can have genuine conversations about issues that we deal with, because it's not being had anywhere else. And for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, men have just been shitted on in every aspect of media. You can't turn on the TV without seeing a dude who's an absolute imbecile. There are no competent men in movies anymore, hardly. So yeah, that's a big issue. And so this is a space where you could go talk to competent men who have experience with women that could tell you the ins and outs of it. I think there are bad influencers, though. I will say that in the manosphere. I don't think you need to go out and get 32 bodies to understand what love is and to understand what sex is. I think you learn how to pleasure a woman from sleeping with that one woman. That's how you get good at pleasuring that one woman. So there are definitely negative influencers in the manosphere. But you gotta watch who you listen to. You gotta be able to have that discernment, and you gotta realize that when we talk about female nature, it isn't to show that they're evil. It's to show that they're human. Because a lot of dudes have pedestalized women because that's what we're kind of taught since they were young. Men are always taught how to treat women. Women are never taught how to treat men. So since we have that growing up, being taught, like, we pedestalize women. So the manosphere is just here to say, yeah, well, women they have their own interest in mind sometimes too, more so now than ever. So you have to be very careful when you're navigating these spaces. These are not the same women that they were 40, 50 years ago. These women are different now. They sleep with somebody in the bathroom, but then tell you got to take them on 15 dates. And so you could get used. There's a lot of dudes that got used. There's a lot of dudes that get taken advantage of. And that's why they go to these spaces. It's not just because they're resentful towards women.
Modern gender dynamics. And these communities are often seen as a solution in contrast to the complicated landscape that we're facing right now within the modern dating world. They talk about things like relationship dynamics, feminism, and societal expectations of masculinity in the modern world. Now, this may seem like a dark space, but there are some positives here that I feel are important to discuss. Again, these spaces, well, they're here for a reason. They serve some form of function that we should pay attention to. Men have found a space or a community where they feel seen, heard, and understood, especially if the culture and society around them is telling them that their thoughts, desires, or perspective is toxic, especially if they've gone through experiences like rejection or divorce. So they are able to find a space where they can validate and verbalize their own experiences while also gaining perspective and feeling related by, where they can share their stories and find some semblance of solace with other men who've also gone through similar experiences. And this overall may help them find a sense of control in their lives once again, encouraging them to focus on self-improvement, financial independence, and personal growth. This is one of the things that I actually agree with when it comes to these communities existing. They do really emphasize a man being masculine, being ambitious, pursuing something, and becoming somebody. But
one of the biggest issues with that, though, is that some dudes get socially isolated and they masturbate with self-improvement, and they actually never do anything. So there's two groups. There's the dudes that socially isolate that actually do it, and then there's the groups that just look at it as masturbation. They don't actually ever get to any of the work. They just put it off. Perfection is the worst thing for good, because you're never going to be perfect. So you could just be good. You don't got to wait for everything to be in line for you to take those actions. So there's a group of guys that just sit there and watch this self-help stuff to feel good in the moment. Then there's that group of guys who actually put in the work, but then they socially isolate themselves. One of the things that I've noticed personally, I have a group of 4 really, really close friends. I mean, when I say close, I mean I've known them my whole lives. We all make over $100,000 a year. We're all pursuing marriage. We're all trying to have children. We're all in very successful spots in life. And I'm just thinking to myself, statistically speaking, what are the chances that we all just met each other and we just became these guys? I think more than likely it's the culture that we have in our group. We tried to avoid drugs, especially in those development years. We hold each other accountable. We tell each other to ask for a raise when it's time to ask for a raise. You've been working there 3 years, you're a good worker. You show up every single day, ask for a raise. And so now we've all gotten to the point, because we have this culture, when our women come around each other, they behave a certain way because they see the standard that our married women in our group hold. They fix our plates and bring them to us. So if you bring a single woman in, she's going to start fixing your plate just to follow the culture of the group. So I think more than likely we found this self-help, but it's really a group help, and we hold each other accountable, and it helps because we stay socially stimulated. We keep these bonds, and our bonds get even closer. So if you're going to do that self-help, get a group of guys that want to do it with you and start early. That's the best way to do it in my perspective. And so I think that it's significantly more likely that it's the culture of our group that builds those strong marriages. All of our wives are close to each other. And I think we're closer to each other than ever. Even though, life separation, you got different responsibilities as a man. You start to prioritize your own personal family, especially when you're having kids and stuff like that. But our culture and our group made it so that we're all pretty successful, relatively. So yeah.
Focus on becoming the best version of oneself can be somewhat productive, and it can lead to overall increases in their self-esteem, self-confidence, overall health, and again, financial resources down the road. And by prioritizing their own well-being and their overall goals, men in these communities may feel more empowered and less dependent on sexual activity, particularly from romantic relationships. And now that we've talked about the positives, well, I do have to talk about the downsides here. One of the biggest criticisms when it comes to looking at these communities is that they often foster a deep cynicism and distrust towards women. And the narratives within these spaces particularly portray women as manipulative, hypergamous, and untrustworthy, which can lead to negative and adversarial views of romantic relationships in general. And this mindset can discourage men from pursuing relationships in the first place, as they may become overly guarded, suspicious, or avoidant of intimate connections altogether. And while these communities do discuss self-improvement, they often do it in such a way that enforces toxic masculinity.
Pop culture has made men feel like women are manipulative, and Red Pill just points it out. When Cardi B is saying, "I don't cook, I don't clean, let me show you how I got this ring," and when all these women in the city girls are talking about taking advantage of men, and it's praised to go on dates, and women are praised for taking advantage of men. Yeah, that's what makes men feel like women are manipulative. And women are manipulative, but they're going to manipulate in one or two ways. You can manipulate in a good way, where you say, husband, you look good today. You go to work, you feeling good. Your wife made your lunch. You start asking for a raise because you know you got this woman who believes in you. She's somewhat manipulating you, but it does boost you and it helps her too. Or you can manipulate by taking away from a man. And I think over the last 20 years, pop culture has glorified the manipulation tactic of women taking advantage of a man or taking from a man without offering any value. So I think that the exposure of how women think, I think the more masculine women have become, I think the more promiscuous women have become, all these things show themselves. And I think the red pill just points it out. I don't really think that, we're convincing it. I think we just point it out.
Emphasizing dominance, emotional suppression or manipulation of their partner's emotions, and the objectification of women. And this can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and behaviors that are counterproductive to building any type of healthy connection. And this fixation on hypermasculinity can also cause men to reject any traits that are perceived as feminine, such as empathy or vulnerability, which are essential for forming any type of deep and meaningful romantic connection. Now, the MGTOW philosophy in particular here encourages men to completely avoid touching a woman with a 9-foot pole. And this lifestyle advocates for complete isolation and independence from women. And while this might create short-term relief with the frustrations of dating, which are totally valid, it can also lead to long-term complications of isolation, loneliness, and further exacerbate men's mental health issues. And this is, again, not just my opinion. Studies show that strong connections are crucial for mental and emotional well-being, but by withdrawing from any type of partnership, men will miss out, I should say, on the emotional and psychological benefits of close and intimate connections. And for anybody that wants to come in and say, well, they have relationships, these relationships are on the internet. And if you've ever met somebody who is mentally stable with only having connections that are on a screen, not one person can do that. Personal relationships in person, in reality, are critical for human beings.
I agree. I think it's important for guys to get into some type of group, whether that be MMA, gun club, chess club. I don't give a shit what it is. Football team, goddamn. I don't know what it has to be. It doesn't matter. But I do think it's important for guys to go seek relationships in real life with other dudes. No Diddy, of course. But yeah, I do think it's important. I think that's an important aspect. I absolutely agree with what she's saying here.
With the narratives that are in these ecosystems. The rhetoric of the red pill and MGTOW spaces often emphasize the risks of modern dating. They talk about divorce, financial loss, and the emotional pain. Again, all of which are valid. But this
and these are all true. Yeah, those are all true. Yeah. Yep.
Leads men to develop toxic and avoidant attitudes towards relationships, which I have to guess the majority of men actually want, as they become more and more focused on self-preservation and resentment towards women than they do on building genuine connections and cultivating some semblance of intimacy. And this isn't just my opinion.
And also, when you're doing the self-help stuff, you have to like still involve yourself socially. You can't socially isolate even when it comes to women. You only get better at being around women and talking to women if you talk to women. It's a very specific set of skills that you learn from only doing it. And if you're like, oh, I got to self-help and be perfect before I could talk to women, you're essentially pedestaling them. You're saying that you have to be perfect to even communicate with a woman, and that's gay.
The data supports this stuff. Men who engage heavily in these types of communities are more likely to report dissatisfaction with their dating lives and the lowest desire to pursue any type of relationship. And honestly, I can't blame them with the narratives and communication that go on within these communities. There's lack of trust, there's lack of desire, and you paint women as the evil demon that you must avoid and who is responsible for all of your problems. Now, this is where it gets really important that I don't paint a picture with a broad brush. There are incredibly toxic women, just as there are incredibly toxic men. But if we try to put everybody under one umbrella, everybody's gonna end up alone, depressed, and probably unhealthy. And men in particular, because they're the ones in these communities who tend to internalize these messages and narratives and take them on as complete truth for every woman they ever meet in their entire fucking lives, will struggle to open up to any potential partner because they fear betrayal or manipulation. And inevitably, this will create a self-fulfilling prophecy where men expect negative outcomes in relationships, leading to behaviors that undermine the relationship itself. And this will inevitably reinforce that there's something wrong with women when really it's the subconscious triggers that manifest behaviors of mistrust, betrayal, insecurity, abandonment that lead men to...
No, there's definitely something wrong with women currently. That's just the truth. I think that social media has allowed women to live in a delusion. I think the safeness of society has allowed women to live in a delusion that's very special in this day and age. Women don't have any issues or problems, so they forget how necessary men are to sustain the infrastructure that they use on a daily basis. And that delusion is just being fed more and more and more. I do think there is an issue with women. I think social media has made women extremely narcissistic and has given them an extremely a crazy amount of options to choose from when it comes to men, so they start to value men less. I genuinely believe that. So I do think there's definitely something different. That plus given the authority to be able to leave a marriage whenever you want. Yeah. Just because you feel sad, and then people will even support that decision, and the government will help you take advantage of your husband. That's a certain type of power that if you don't have experience with dealing with power, you can easily misuse. So yeah, I do think there's a big issue with women right now, mentally. And I think that's reflected in the stats. I think it was some of 20% of women are on some type of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. Women are not doing well. And that was in like 2012 or something like that. I would assume it's just higher now with everybody talking about, oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I have autism. Oh, I have blah, blah. It's like trendy to have mental illness amongst women. So yeah, there's definitely something going on with people mentally, especially on the female side. I'm just being honest here, and I think it has to do with overexposure to men that take it that's just sleep with them and then not give them anything in the long term. It builds a certain resentment where they punish the guys that actually want them because they can't have the guys that they want or that they sleep with. They'll go. You know how that goes.
Avoid any type of depth, which will inevitably ruin a relationship. Which brings me to my next point. Social media. Social media has become an integral part of daily life, and it profoundly affects how men see themselves, especially in comparison to their male counterparts. While opportunities can be provided by social media for connection and self-expression, it also introduces new challenges and pressures that can influence a man's desire and ability to form committed relationships. Social media platforms provide men with the ability to connect with a wider range of people than ever before, and these platforms make it a lot easier to meet potential partners.
For a very small minority of men, let's just be honest here. And it was reflected in the stats at the beginning. Most men are not meeting up with women and sleeping with them like women have the option to do with men. It's just complete. Like, I hate when they try to equalize this by saying social media is giving everybody more options. No, it's given a small minority of very high performance men options, and it's given all of the women options to try to sleep with those high performance men and then take out their frustrations on regular men because they know they can't control those high performing men. Yeah, so no, that I don't agree with this here. And I hate when people try to bring up this point because, like at the beginning of the video, most men are not sleeping with women. Most men are not in relationships with women. Most men aren't even seeking relationships with women at this point. So no, it doesn't give men specifically a plethora of options, but it does make men very replaceable to women because they feel like they have a plethora of options when really those options just want to sleep with them, and they don't understand that.
Especially for men who might be more shy or have limited social circles. Dating apps and social media allow men to reach out to others based on shared interests and values, increasing their chances of finding a potentially compatible partner. Additionally, social media can also foster and strengthen current relationships by opening the window for communication, and this enables certain couples to stay connected even when they're miles apart. Another note on social media, relative to even this topic of conversation in YouTube, is that there's a vast amount of information on relationships and anything else, including advice from experts or experiences shared by peers. And this can empower anybody, including men, with knowledge and strategies for building healthy and sustainable relationships. Now, one potential upside and also potential flaw is that it allows people to express themselves and present a curated version of their identity. This can be empowering to a certain extent, the idea that you can be whoever it is that you want to be. And it also gives people the ability to exercise control over their own perception. If it's authentic and through that vehicle you're expressing your personal values or interests, you can attract people with like-minded ideals that resonate with this persona.
I don't agree with that either. I don't think social media rewards authenticity. I think the guys who are fake flexers, I think the guys who know how to operate an Instagram and post the best pictures, I don't think most guys look as good in pictures as they do in person. I think there are some guys who understand that Instagram is the biggest dating app on the world, so they learn how to take those angles and pictures and to put on the right jewelry and to sit in front of the right cars when really they just written all that shit out. I don't think that social media rewards authenticity at all, to be honest here, especially amongst men. So yeah, I disagree with her there. I'm disagreeing a lot in the social media aspect, but we're pretty much agreeing on everything else. So
Negative to that, though, is that there's plenty of people that also curate a version of them that isn't what you would meet in real life.
Yeah, and those are
And
the
this is
people
where the
rewarded.
tendency for narcissistic individuals to manipulate and control other people for their own personal gain gets really dark. Another negative regarding social media and its presence, especially how it impacts relationships and men, is that it often presents an idealized version of life. Users post carefully selected moments that highlight their success or perceived achievements. We can get angles and Photoshop to highlight attractiveness and ultimately give you a snapshot into a moment of happiness. And this can create unrealistic expectations for what it means to be a man who's successful and also impact what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship. And this constant comparison can lead to dissatisfaction and amplified levels of insecurity when it comes to you assessing your own life. And this
Yeah, and I think it misconstrues. I think it makes women delusional too. Like a lot of those dudes sitting in front of those cars don't actually own those cars; they're renting those cars. A lot of those building those houses they're in front of are Airbnbs that they rented for a couple nights to take these pictures. And I know people who have done, like I've known people who do things like this. It's an absolute facade, and I think a lot of women compare the men that in their dating age to those men, and it's not even accurate or real. The average age for a millionaire is like 55 years old, and usually a lot of that value is in their home. So if you're 20 years old as a man, you don't need to be hyper successful. And if you're 20 years old as a woman, don't expect your man to be hyper successful. Deal in those hard times with him so that he values you when y'all make it. That's what you're supposed to do. Not wait for him at the finish line, because he's not going to value the things that you may add to him because he doesn't get to see them because he's already at the finish line. If you start with me and we build together, I can see you adding the value. Even if other people can't see it on the outside, that's fine. I understand the value that you add when we build it together. But if I already got it, I don't understand the value of you. You're replaceable. Why? So, yeah, I think it creates an unrealistic expectation. And I think a lot of younger women hold a lot of younger men to that expectation, not understanding that it's all fake. They hold themselves to that expectation, and that's obvious. It's all fake. Like they're getting plastic surgeries. It's fake. It's crazy. They just want to look like the algorithm. That's all it is. They literally, like, you go through Instagram, a lot of these people just look like the algorithm. They're doing the same things at a fancy restaurant, taking the picture. Like, we get it. It all looks the same to me. It's very unrealistic, too.
Can deter men specifically from even pursuing any type of relationship, as they believe that they can't measure up to the perceived standards that are being presented online. And if you've spent more than 5 minutes on social media, you'll see highlight reels of girls on yachts and men who are wealthy, and everybody has this idea that, well, all of these women only want men who have all these fun toys. When in reality, if you go out and actually talk to a woman, most of us don't really give a shit about that. Regardless, the pressure to maintain a certain level of image on social media can lead to increased levels of anxiety and the ultimate fear of rejection, particularly when it comes to shooting your shot with a woman or dating anybody. And this will ultimately continue to put pressure on men to present themselves in a certain light, in a way that they believe will be attractive to other people or women. The problem with that, though, is that it forces men to put on a mask. If that's not who they really are or the lifestyle that they actually live, well, it's easier to create a distance and play the long distance game until you can get somebody to fall in love with you, so that maybe that's enough. And this ultimately driving up the anxiety, making it significantly harder for them to actually cultivate something real.
That's because the women don't understand that those men aren't looking to fall in love, and that's a very female take. Those guys aren't looking to fall in love. They're looking to smash and dash, brother. And they know the easiest way to do that is to look like you got flashy, nice things, because women gonna go, you know, the old Dave Chappelle the meme, gotcha, bitch. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a gotcha, bitch. That's what it is. You just go, oh, look at nice Porsche. Oh, it's rented. Gotcha, bitch. Slept with you in Miami. You're cooked. That's what it is.
Real in reality, and it'll start to drive this perception of who they need to be while preventing them from actually taking the step and being vulnerable, owning who they are. Because at the end of the day, just as a personal side note, women care a lot more about your kindness than they do about your success. And no, this doesn't mean that women don't care about you having ambition or being driven or being successful in some light. But if you are a successful asshole, I'll choose a kind man who's middle class all day.
Cap, not true. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Not amongst most women. That's just not true. Yeah, they like kindness from men that they like. They don't just like kindness. They like kindness from men that they like. If you're just kind, you'll be put in the friend zone for sure. So they like kindness from the men that they like. They want the men that they like to be kind to them. That's what it is. Yeah.
Now, another negative, in my personal opinion, but maybe positive for you, is that social media, particularly dating apps, foster a culture of superficial interactions and create this casual hookup culture. The emphasis on quick surface-level judgments based on photos and brief profiles can lead to the devaluation of even building a deeper connection.
If you're a regular guy, and I just want to say this for the regular dudes because I don't want to seem doom and gloom, because you can't have a successful relationship, but you have to have boundaries. Boundaries make you seem more valuable. You can't negotiate if you're not willing to walk away. If a woman does something that you don't like, of course women do have a certain level of naivety and they don't understand the masculine perspective, so you do have to be patient sometimes. I'm not just saying jump the gun and break up with her because she did something you don't like. Explain to her why you don't like it, or you don't have to explain to her why you don't like it. Say, I don't want you to go out. That simple. If you go out, we're not going to be together anymore. And if you've had that conversation with her and she chooses to go out anyway, then that means she values going out more than she values your relationship. From that point, you could just stay silent. That's one way to do it. Reserve yourself, because sometimes men aren't appreciated until they're gone. So if you just be quiet, I don't need to talk to you anymore. Let's draw a little distance. I don't think that was acceptable. But if she keeps habitually violating, you have to have strict boundaries of things you will accept and won't accept. And if you have to walk away to preserve those boundaries, that's what you have to do. And that'll make you seem more valuable. The best way to get a woman back that does something that you didn't like, if you do want to get her back, is to walk away. The more you beg and the more you plead and the more you compromise yourself, the weaker you look. You look like you don't have any options. You look desperate. You have to be willing to walk away. If she is your only option, bluff it. Can't negotiate if you're not willing to walk away from the table. That's just the truth of the matter.
And this will ultimately discourage both parties from pursuing any type of depth when it comes to a relationship. The other problem with this is that optionality doesn't really lead to optimality, meaning that the abundance of options that we always have allows people to keep the door open for the grass being greener on the other side. And this can lead men to searching for multiple different options instead of actually making a commitment to one person. And the same for women. The greater impact on this, though, especially in the aftermath of COVID, is that most people don't really have good face-to-face communication skills. And these are crucial for not only building, but maintaining a healthy relationship. Men who primarily interact online may struggle a ton when it comes to actually communicating or meeting somebody in person. And this can lead to awkwardness and misunderstandings, which will create significantly more difficulty in forming any type of relationship. And over time, this can erode their levels of confidence in overall social situations, making it much more challenging to initiate and sustain any meaningful relationship. So while there are positives and negatives when it comes to social media for everybody, such as opportunities for connection or increased ability to get information, there are also pretty severe negatives. And as somebody who works in mental health, I think it's really important to consider some of the impacts and the trade-offs that we make with having such a wide ability to connect with people, not just in our communities, not just in our neighborhoods, not just in our states, around the world. And this can continue to negatively impact somebody's self-esteem if they don't have confidence in who they are and actually understand where they want to go or where they find meaning in their life. Because you'll always be chasing this dangling carrot that tells you that you're not enough, but maybe you will be someday if you start to do all of these perceived things that make you high value. Which brings me to my next point, which might be a little uncomfortable to talk about, but between 76 and 87% of 18 to 29-year-old men consume pornography regularly. And of these men who use pornography regularly, they report less satisfaction in real life sex. Even more alarming than this, though, is the rise in erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, and diminished libido.
Yeah, sperm count is down like 63%. And that was in like 2020, so I couldn't imagine now. Yeah, they're poisoning the food. That's part of the issue. The food has poison in it in America. The government and the companies are working in cahoots to poison the food. There's a reason why there are certain chemicals that are allowed in food in America that's not allowed overseas. They can make it healthier if somebody held them accountable. But our government is working in cahoots with them. And if you think that the government prioritizes you over corporations at this point, look at who has more freedoms. Who has more tax exemptions, the middle class man or a company? If a company pollutes a lake, they pay $1 million fine. If you pollute a lake, you go into jail. Why is it that way? There was a color that there's a red dye that's put into Fruit Loops because it attracts the eye of children in America, but in other countries they can't put it. But in other countries they can't do that. So yeah, in America specifically, there's a coalition between the government and companies to take advantage of the average person, and they're poisoning the food. That's part of it. There was a dude who made a video about it was at Dunkin' Donuts. They were selling like a spice latte or whatever it was. It had so much sugar in it, it was equivalent to 12 donuts. Who allows that? At what point is it not fit for human consumption? Because I didn't know that. I didn't know that before I seen that video. So yeah. They working in cahoots. Yeah, erectile dysfunction. Yeah, sperm count down 60%. Testosterone down about 40% since 1979. Those are big issues, and some of it comes from diet. I agree with the porn issue too, but a lot of it comes from diet too.
Men under 40 years
together.
old. And this is all associated with frequent pornography use. And this has become more and more prevalent with the expansion of the digital world, particularly among young men. The pervasive and often addictive nature has profound consequences on men's ability to even engage in romantic relationships. One of the biggest factors in this is the fact that they become highly desensitized to real life sex. And this may require them to have to use extreme content in order to achieve even the same level of arousal. And this will continue to decrease their satisfaction when it comes to engaging with a woman in reality, because normal sex doesn't stimulate this same level of arousal. This also creates exaggerated sexual experiences, which will create unrealistic expectations of what it's like to have sex with somebody as a human being in reality versus fantasy.
Yeah, I think the same thing has happened to women when it comes to them being able to sleep with the 6'2" athlete in college, and then they expect their middle class regular husband at 30 to be able to sexually perform like that guy. And if he isn't as stimulating as the guy that she slept with in college, she feels like she can divorce him because of his lack of good at sex, like because he's not good at sex. When really you weren't supposed to be exposing yourself to those other dudes. But I do think that porn is the male equivalent in terms of expectation of sex as the woman that sleeps with multiple men and assume that her regular husband that she marries to at 28 is going to have that same sexual prowess and aggression throughout their entire marriage. So.
And this will lead to a distorted view of sex and intimacy overall. And this will also put pressure not just on men, but on women for how they're supposed to be and what their performance needs to be like. Instead of looking at the connection or the bond that you're creating that is meaningful, in my opinion, and spiritual when you're actually engaging in this act with somebody. And
a lot of times dudes will expect a woman to be able to do backflips on it. And I'm like, do you want a pure woman? Do you want purity? Do you want femininity? Or do you want all these things? Because a woman that's pure and feminine, she ain't going to be knowing how to do backflips on it. You may have to teach her some things through longevity if y'all in a long-term relationship, but yeah, she's not going to be doing backflips on it. She's going to be very reserved. You're going to have to do a lot of the work a lot of the times until you build that together and y'all learn what each other like over the course of time. But yeah, there's a lot of dudes that they'll just look at a woman differently because she's not a freak. And I'm like, yeah, you're used to dealing with freaky women. You got to chill out if you want a woman of virtue. They're not going to be the same way.
This can ultimately lead to frustration, a disconnect, and overall dissatisfaction in the intimacy or relationship that you're trying to build. And these aren't just my opinions. This is based in research. Exposure to pornography use regularly is associated with greater acceptance of casual sex, which will undermine the stability and emotional depth of romantic relationships. And this drives people to shift away from emotional intimacy to personal gratification. And men who consume pornography regularly find it difficult to engage emotionally with their partner, as their primary sexual experiences are primary solitary and focus on visual stimuli rather than the physical and emotional connection. And this next point's important. The use of pornography can lead to secrecy and shame in a relationship, creating this barrier when it comes to open communication and trust. Partners may feel betrayed or inadequate when they discover their significant other's pornography use, which will lead to conflict, insecurity, and likely a breakdown in the relationship. But while I can sit here and talk about the negatives, just like the red pill space or other extreme communities, we have to ask why men are relying on this so heavily. And for some men, it provides a sense of stress relief, a way to express their sexuality when a partner is either unavailable or uninterested. And it can be a way for them to satisfy their sexual urges without the complications or stress of a real-life partner. And this can help men ultimately reduce feelings of loneliness. If a man's needs are not being met by his partner or just in general in life,
Yeah, y'all, this is a really good video. I'm gonna leave a link in the pinned comments and in the description below. This is a small creator too, so y'all go give her a like, give her a follow, tell her I sent y'all. This is a really, really good, well-planned, well-thought-out video. I enjoyed it. I like the background music. It was great. But the final thoughts, I guess, is you better be fucking happy these dudes are watching porn, playing video games, eating junk food, and becoming beta as fuck. Because I'm telling you right now, there's only one or two ways this thing is gonna go with the frustration of these young men. It's only one or two ways, and this has been a problem throughout all of history. Luckily now we have digital video games, we have digital pornography, but that wasn't a thing 100, 200 years ago, 300, 400 years ago. You better thank the Lord that these boys have pornography to lean to because it used to be violence. Yeah, they used to burn that bitch to the ground. Yeah, if a man didn't have a family or no hope of having a family, they'd burn the society. So the fact that the boys are watching porn and video games, that's what's stimulating them now so they don't go burn it down. Right now, they have the option to just back out and not participate. Either they're going to express it through violence or they're going to express it through backing out. And from the vast majority of what you see, men not going to college, men not starting families, men not being interested in dating, men dropping out of the workforce. All of these things are becoming an issue, and that's the men dropping out of the competition. They don't want to be involved in it anymore. And so women have said that we can lead, the future is female, and now men are backing up and saying, okay, we're calling your bluff, show us. Show us. And this is going to become a very big issue. Right now, the whole economy is only stimulated by women in Amazon. I got a wife every other day. She got a package. The women are pushing the whole economy. If it's up to men, we'll sit in a cave. If we don't have a family that pushes us to be responsible, and since they're taking away all the authority of a man in a family, men don't want to take on the responsibility because why would you if you don't have authority? Because of that issue, men are backing out. Yeah, they don't want to deal with it. So yeah, thank the Lord we have porn and video games because this ain't sustainable. We'll see if the future is actually female. A lot of men are dropping out. We can't. So this is a great video. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give me the HBO special. That's Brother Out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.